I think that I always had a longing to know God, and I feel like something I've kind of learned recently was that was God already within me. I am a member of Asbury Memorial, and we merged together with Wesley Oak. I get the opportunity to be involved with the congregation here and to learn at this time that I am in seminary. Asbury Memorial had stopped performing any weddings because they could not marry people of the same gender. I think that that's when they decided that they were going to leave the denomination.
John Wesley is the founder of Methodism. He signed on to a mission to come over to Georgia and was an abject failure. He finds himself listening to somebody read Martin Luther's preface to the book of Romans, where he speaks about God's grace. And suddenly, the Holy Spirit strikes Wesley. His heart is strangely warm. This led Wesley to understand that every human being is really valuable to God.
When I started seminary in 1971, we had a great opportunity to just go 12 minutes from campus and see the Methodist Church in action. So I was sitting there in the Civic Center when the first report of the new social principles were being proposed for the denomination. I still remember a white man, pastor, going to a microphone and moving an amendment. While we do not condone the practice of homosexuality and find it incompatible with Christian teaching, homosexual persons are persons of sacred worth. I know I had some feeling about it as I sat there watching, that this was a slow motion disaster, and sure enough, here we are 50 years later, and it has still been one of the most disruptive actions that could ever have been taken.
In very formal ways, it has not changed at all. We have very exclusive language still. We're prohibited from doing weddings within our church. I am prohibited as a United Methodist pastor, or else they'll take my credentials. And people who are called to ministry, who identify as being openly gay or transgender, they're not allowed to be ordained. How it has changed informally, though, I think has been a great deal. This church had been open and affirming of LGBTQ persons since the early to mid-1990s. We talk about it openly, we say it, it's honest, we're true, and there are people within our church, many who are LGBTQ. We participate in the Savannah Pride Festival every year, really just try to be present for that so people know that there are churches who support them.
The split goes back to the beginning of the United Methodist Church in 1968. At the next General Conference in 1972, two guys got up and suggested that even though homosexuals are loved by God, homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching. And the two that did that came back to regret having done that, because in 1972, that was not a big issue. It was only in social principles, meaning it had no legislative understanding. In 2019, at General Conference, one of the ideas that was put forth was a way for churches who disagreed to leave the church. So they put a paragraph in discipline, paragraph 2553, that allows churches to disaffiliate. Some of the churches that I've spoken to are going to go with the Global Methodist Church, which is the more traditionalist, more conservative, new denomination. And many of the churches are just going to go independent. They're just going to go out on their own, which can be problematic for them. They can't call me as a district superintendent and say, hey, we don't have a pastor for Sunday. Do you know someone who can come preach for us? The ability of that connection to support and strengthen us is lost.
We were the first church to disaffiliate, and we voted to disaffiliate because of the United Methodists not being affirming of LGBTQIA+ community. Well, it's the most exciting thing, really, to be free of that now, because that's going to help us figure out who we are, and we're getting to shape our new identity, which is inclusive of everyone.
Dear disaffiliating United Methodist congregations, the pastors and lay members who are leading you to vote to leave the UMC tell you that your local church will remain the same as it has always been. No, it will never be the same. Some of your members will vote to stay in the UMC. Votes like this are deep wounds that people rarely get over. Divisions like this can scar your congregation for generations to come. I believe totally in the big tent. That gives us a place to remain in fellowship and conversation. We can talk. If you leave, that will come to a crashing halt. And that would be a shame. No, probably a sin. Well, I think that really hit a nerve. The vast majority that are leaving are because they are either being told that the United Methodist Church is going to change its position on human sexuality to be more accepting, or they simply don't want anything to do with the denomination where such a thing would even be considered. I think we've paid dearly for failing to really explore the issue together as a Christian community, and instead just slamming it into the book as if it were God's truth.
It's amazing for me now to talk to 60-year-olds who live the majority of their lives in the closet, to talk to 40-year-olds who lived most of their young lives in the closet, and then to talk to college kids who have lived very little, if any, of their lives in the closet. If the 17-year-old knew what the 60-year-old thought of them, they're heroes.
I knew that I was gay when I was in 3rd grade, and actually probably even a little bit before that, but I was still finding the words, and of course I was just a little kid, so I didn't know what it all meant, but I knew who I felt emotionally drawn to. I was certainly bullied and threatened and made fun of, and for a while I tried to change who I was. I tried to do things like deepen my voice, but then something just happened, and I thought, I'm just myself, and I'm going to be exactly who I am. I came to church as openly and completely myself, and wonderfully and thankfully I was completely embraced without a blink of an eye or a second thought. I dress how I want to dress. I am with my boyfriend, and that's the most amazing thing.
Now, is disaffiliation good? Is it bad? Jury's still out for me on that one. Maybe it'll turn out to be a good thing. Maybe it'll be a way that we can find our way back together. There are lots of questions about the future in the United Methodist Church. We've been part of it since we were really little. And the thought of leaving what has nurtured us and cared for us is really hard. If we can be a people who can still love Jesus, who can reach out in love and in care to the least and the lost, who can recognize that we're all different and we're not going to agree on practically anything, God will be with us and we will find a way through.
I always think about the story of Ruth, and that's a perfect example of someone as an outsider claiming God for herself. Ruth says, your God will be my God and your people will be my people. And that's so inspiring, because you can try to leave me out. You can try to deny me of God's love, but God's love is mine.